welcome back to another behind the scenes cake life vlog. This week we are working on a wedding cake. It is 3-tier and it could not be more spring-like if it tried. It is lovely, clean white, pastel spring flowers and a little hint of Harry Potter. I love cakes like this. These are the type of cakes I call geek chic, which means they have a geek element, but it still looks like a pretty wedding cake. So it's like not full on geek, there's just little hints of it there and it is still a chic design. So first thing first, I need to make my ganache. I'm just going to get my cream. And it is actually a Saturday today. You will know if you watch these vlogs regularly. I used to have like a weekly system, so Monday was all my admin and my drawings and everything. Tuesday is my baking day. Wednesday is my ganaching day. Thursday, Fridays are decorating days, and Saturdays the cakes usually get delivered to the weddings. And that's how it usually runs, and then I get like Saturday afternoon and Sunday off as my days off at the weekend like most other people. But what I have found, like 2025, 2026 has been an absolute boom of midweek weddings. Now I don't blame them. It is cheaper to get married midweek than it is at a weekend. It just means I've had to open my calendar a little bit more to be able to get those bookings. So this cake is being delivered for a wedding on a Tuesday, hence why Saturday is now my ganaching day. Sunday will be my decorating day, Monday will be my decorating day, and then Tuesday is the delivery day, which does mean I lose my weekend. And then my days off become like Wednesday, Thursday, but obviously people are at work and stuff. Let me get my chocolate. And as luck would have it, today is an absolute scorcher of a day. We have lovely weather, 17 degrees. But I am starting to feel it a little bit in the studio, which means my aircon unit is going to have to come back out and I'm going to have to install it again back up that corner where I have my lighting tent. But snapping this chocolate is very loud, so I'll come back to you in a minute. So yeah, the weather is only supposed to be really, really nice today, and then for the next week we get cold and rainy weather. So I don't mind working when it's like that. But yeah, my whole kind of diary has shifted a little bit with all these midweek weddings. Like I don't mind because obviously sometimes we have to tweak things to get the work. And I mean, there's always been midweek weddings. I'm not saying that these are new. What I'm saying is I'm seeing a massive rise in them. So maybe where I got asked for like midweek weddings maybe 5 times in a year, I am now getting asked for a heck of a lot more. I think I've got more midweek weddings this year than I have weekend weddings, which is just insane. Because as I finish this one to be delivered on Tuesday, the week after that is another midweek wedding, which is like a Thursday, I think. So yeah, it just kind of messes around with my like system. But like I said, sometimes you just have to do these things. So I'm just making my ganache here now. So this is dark chocolate ganache. It is 2 parts chocolate to 1 part cream. It is my most favorite ganache to make because it is the easiest, it is the cheapest, it sets the hardest, and it is the last one to melt. So I will always love to use dark chocolate ganache. And yes, this is going under a white finished wedding cake. So all you have to do is make sure that your sugar paste layer is kind of thick enough to hide the dark underneath. I know a lot of people prefer to use white chocolate for that. But white chocolate to me is the hardest to make. It is the most finicky, the most annoying, snotty. But yeah, there's ways around it. So that's my ganache now done. There's no lumps in that. It is nice and glossy. I'm going to pop that to one side because it is a little bit too runny to work with. I have my sugar syrup already done in a jug. This is 1 part sugar to 1 part boiling water until all the sugar is dissolved, and then you just need to let this cool down. This is still a little bit warm, so both things are going to be put to one side to cool down a little bit. It's 3:30 now and I have my cakes ganached. So the sizes for this is a small 3-tier, and these are a 4-inch, a 6-inch and an 8-inch. This is the smallest 3 tier you can get due to the top tier already being a small 4-inch. Any smaller than that, it's going to be very difficult to ice. It's going to be difficult to fit any sort of topper on. So a 4-inch really is kind of the smallest you can go for the top of a wedding cake. Now, I think I'm going to call it a day here because I do like to leave the ganache overnight if I can. The reason for that is the fillings and the cake is still settling inside this, and more often than not, sometimes I will pop in and one cake will have a tiny crack where jam is trying to escape or things like that. I mean, it doesn't happen all that often, but it does happen to the point where if I'd covered this, it would have just caused a bulge in the sugar paste. So I like to sit overnight, come in the morning. If everything's looking good, I start covering them. If there is a crack, I can sort that out, re-ganache it, and I know that it's going to fix the problem. So I'm going to go home. I have time to fit a walk in today to try and get my steps in because I've only done 1,000 steps today, and make some tea. So I will see you again tomorrow. Good morning, it is now Sunday. I have come in and checked the cakes and they're all fine. There is no cracks, which is what we want to see. So today I'm going to be covering these in white. Now, I did touch on the fact that this is dark chocolate ganache and there is white paste going over the top of it. And the way I like to describe this, it's a bit like if you're wearing a black bra under a white top. If you're wearing a really thin white top, you're gonna see your bra. If you wear a thin white jumper, you're still going to be able to see it a little bit. If you put on a big, thick, chunky white jumper, you're not going to be able to see your bra underneath. So putting a slightly thicker layer of sugar paste on will make sure you don't see the dark underneath. So I'll show you the design I have drawn up. So here it is a 3-tier. We have clusters of the spring-like flowers. The always symbol that I'm going to be hand painting this in gold, and then there's just a little snitch at the top there. So the only Harry Potter elements is obviously the quote and the snitch, and then the rest is still kind of like a pretty spring wedding cake. I've got some little dots on the picture here. These just are like little pearls. So yeah, let's recreate this. Now we have our naked cake ready for florals. I have a selection here in colours I think look nice together. So we've got 2 different shades of like these poppy type flowers. We've got a darker pink and then an ever so slightly paler pink to put together. as per the doodle. Now there are yellow flowers on the doodle, but I think the yellow centres of these daisies are already kind of like bright enough, and daisies just scream like spring. The spring floral, so I've added these daisies in. Then there was some blue, very small blue florals, so I've got these tiny ones here that we can just kind of snip off and add a few at a time. Fillers, we've got some nice fluffy lilac ones here which will help hold the poppy petals where they're supposed to be when you nestle them in and around them. And I just need some greenery. If you've seen my last vlog where I was sorting out all of my fake florals, you'll know I have plenty. So let's start to group these together and see if we can get them on. If you haven't seen how I put flowers on cakes, I have these white straws because obviously my cake is white, so I have these white chubby straws which I can fit a few stems in. I will trim it off, plug the end with sugar paste and pop some sugar paste in the top as well, so that when you start shoving your stems in, that sugar paste will eventually set and harden and hold all your flowers into place, and none of these stems and plastic is going to be inside of your sponge because it's all contained inside the straw. For flowers that won't go in here, or I maybe just need to add one and it won't fit in the straw, it just needs to be kind of slightly right of the straw, I will tape one of these to a cocktail stick. So I tape it all up and then the cocktail stick can go into the cake rather than the plastic flower. So here the florals have kind of like a fuzzy stem, and you certainly don't want to be putting that in your cake and having all these little tiny fibres coming off. So we're going to contain that inside a straw. So obviously you just want to pop your flower in, and I can see the end of the stem is there, so you want to make it a little bit longer. I'm going to chop that roughly there. And now I'm going to fill this with white sugar paste. First I'm going to plug the bottom up, because this is the bit that's going to be inside the cake, so we want to make sure that's nice and secure. And then just adding a straw of paste inside. Keep shoving it down. Right, so that's the bottom plugged up. Sugar paste is shoved down, and you do want to leave a little bit loose, obviously, because you need to be able to sink your stalks in there now. So I can push that right down in there to make sure it's not going to be touching the cake. And then this will harden so your flowers don't flop about. So I'm going to add this section here first, I think, because we have 4 flower clusters all together. So I'm going to push that down there at an angle. And then I'm just going to pull the flower out slightly, because I want to make sure I can get some other ones around it. Let's go in with the darker one now. So I have this small cluster of daisies. These have got 5 on one kind of stem, but you can just individually chop these off if you want and use them here and there. I think 5 is quite a good amount for what I'm using this for. So I just need to move these petals out the way, find that straw and push that down inside there. Now the reason why I like artificial flowers is because I do mess with them a lot, and I poke them and move their petals around, shove them in. If these were sugar, I would have 100% have broken them by now. And they're also on wires as well, so I can bend the poppies wherever I want them to sit. They're just a lot more forgiving. And I always find it better to use artificial than real ones, because real ones, you've obviously got certain types of flowers that are toxic. You might have been sprayed with pesticides. There's always like little bugs hiding right under there, and they'll crawl out onto the cake. So yeah, artificial is just my preference. So I've cut my purple flower off, and what we have here is what I call a very weak stem. So this has no wire in it, it's just a bit of plastic, and it's actually very, very floppy, and it's not going to stand up where I want it on this length. I had to chop it off here because there was another flower coming off of it, so I couldn't get it any longer. So in instances like this, I'm now going to tape this to a cocktail stick. So I'm just going to place that against my cocktail stick there and then just start taping this up. And keeping that stem inside there down the cocktail stick. That's all in there now. And what we're left with is a much sturdier flower. And then I can have this popping up here and only putting the cocktail stick part down into the cake. And then you just can rearrange the leaves so that you can't see the stems. So that's looking good so far. Now for this piece, my little blue ones, I just want a very small pop of blue, and there's a little gap here just under this petal. So I'm going to push that set in there, and that actually sits nicely, and on a lot of occasions I've not fastened that in because wedding cakes are not really there to be handled and touched, just looked at. So these really shouldn't fall out. But if you did want to secure these in, because there's nothing really to stick them into because the part of the stem runs flat across the top of the cake, what you can do is have a little sneak where it ends. You can just see it's poking out there. Can you just see that? Where you can take a very small ball of paste, glue that in there with water and stick it into the ball, which will hold it in place if you're not keen on just kind of letting it sit there on its own. You can see just under there now we have a ball of paste. You might not be able to see it because it blends in with the rest of the cake now that it's white, but that is now secured in there. And then obviously we can still see this stem now. This is the back of the cake, so you feel free to leave that as it is. I do like to fill any gaps though, so there's no problem with just popping an extra flower here or extra floral just to cover up the view of the stem from the back of the cake. Right, so that's our first cluster on. We have a bit of blue, a bit of the darker pink mixed with the paler pink. We have a bit of lilac poking out through the top, our little daisies, and then some bits of greenery. Now everything here is pretty much shoved into that one straw, apart from this purple flower that we stuck a cocktail stick on. This is also in a cocktail stick. These two go into the straw. And then we have these blue ones just resting on there in a ball of sugar paste. So really it shouldn't be too difficult to easily remove all those. But we do have another 3 clusters now to add. When it comes to adding a cluster of flower down on the board, obviously there's nothing we can stick the flowers into here to anchor them in. My favourite thing is a nice big ball of sugar paste, the same colour as the cake. So in our case we're going to have a nice big white ball of sugar paste, and it's a case of just shoving those floral stems straight in because it is just a ball of paste and it's not going to be eaten, so it's there just to hold the flowers in place. So I'm just going to use a little bit of water down here to stick our ball to, and that is a nice squishy warm ball ready to pop the stems in. So I'm going to go in with a pale pink one because we have dark pink showing on our other cluster, and we just want to snip this down so there's enough stem to push into that ball. Push that in there like that. Job done. It is so easy to do. I love this method. I'm going to pop the darker pink up there. So this is where I'm actually going to take my 5 cluster of, I can't speak, my 5 cluster of daisies, and I'm just going to trim them down because maybe I only want like 2 or 3. So I'm just using wire cutters. They're easily done with scissors though. Chopping those off a little bit. And then we've got the option of now adding in individual daisies exactly where we want them instead of 5. And this is purely to fill the little gap that we had there where we could still see the ball of sugar paste, but one daisy's actually already covered that up. Just taken those ones out because they looked a bit too uniform to be spring flowers, because spring flowers literally will just grow where they want. They don't care how tall they are or if they look nice and uniformed against other daisies, they're just gonna grow. So I'm just adding in some longer ones here. If you haven't noticed, I faff a heck of a lot. See if we can add a little cluster of greenery down here. How does that look? Yes, that looks good. Shove that into that ball of paste underneath there. Hold it in position. And it'll still feel all mega soft and floppy for the time being because that ball is still soft, but when it hardens, you can feel everything's nicely and secure in place. Filling gaps. I am going to have this cake finished today, and it is still Sunday, so I'm very happy about that. It's currently 2:45. Oh my god, when am I going to learn to stop faffing with bits? Now the only thing missing from this cluster is a little bit of blue, and if you get one of these florals where your cluster pops off of another wire, these are great because this is a perfect size for a cocktail stick. So you just grab that, you pop your cocktail stick up inside, give it a twist, and you have your florals now ready on a stick. Lemon love it. Nice and quick. I'm just going to take the length down a little bit because it's only going in our ball of paste, but it did just need that extra little bit of height there for it to be able to stick up behind this pink flower. There. I'm probably explaining this way too much, but hopefully it helps somebody who just doesn't really know where to start. Right, before I finish this top cluster, we have the little snitch to put on. Now, I've had this sitting in the cupboard for quite a while because this was actually some cherry mail I sent out a long time ago. So this is from the Maker Fox. She's one of my brigadiers and she makes acrylic toppers, amongst lots of other things like edible images. And I contacted her because I was trying to use some of the brigadiers as well and support them, as well as send out cherry mail goodies to the other brigadiers. So we used Kim and we created this little snitch. So she's got this gold snitch in the center with these silvery wings. And it's attached to this acrylic rod, which makes it nice and easy to stick straight into the cake, and is what I'm going to be using because that gold is so eye-catching when it glistens. And hopefully the weather is going to be beautiful on Tuesday for the wedding, and it will glimmer from across the room. So I'm going to place this in and then finish off the top flower arrangement. Only 3 minutes left on the SD card and very minimal battery, so I just need to sweep through this. But I absolutely love this cake. I am always going to be a fan of this colour palette. I just love the clean whites and then the bright little kind of pastel-y pops of colour mixed with gold details. So yep, absolutely chuffed to bits with this. Glad I have a day off tomorrow to do some admin bits that I'm behind on, and then we're delivering this one on Tuesday. But thank you very much for putting up with me while I waffled through the flower arrangements, but hopefully you found it useful. But I'm off home now to get some tea. So this cake was off to Preston, maybe 45-50 minutes away, and we set it up on this rustic table. I think it just fits in so well with the rustic decor. The table was a little bit on the wonky side. You know me and my wonky table dilemmas. But this was like a floor to table ratio difference. It just needed a good wedge of card under one of the legs to stop it from wobbling. The venue was looking lovely. I am always going to be a fan of string lights, any type of fairy lights. They just look really good in rustic settings. And I also love a wooden chair. And they also had lots of lovely spring flowers just being put out on some of the tables whilst I was there. And yes, Preston is not far from Blackpool, so guess where we ended up again? Again, turning any sort of cake delivery into a mini day out. We had a few 2p's to spend in the arcade. We had a good look around Primark because the one in Blackpool is actually like 4 floors and it's amazing. So we had a little wander around there, and then, yeah, that was my week, or one wedding cake week. Absolutely adored this design. I just love designs like this. Like, don't get me wrong, I know I am known for mashups, but every now and again, to give my brain a rest, I do love a clean palette where it's literally just two things to put together: spring flowers and a bit of Harry Potter. I do love it. But thank you very much for watching. I know this video was quite informative compared to my usual videos. I think I went a bit heavy on the explaining, but I can remember being right back there at the beginning and only watching people make these wired sugar flowers because it was all very traditional and they had posy picks and things, and right at the beginning those were quite expensive to buy. And I wasn't a massive fan of making sugar flowers, and so much has changed since I started, and I just didn't know what to do with the flowers. Like, what is the right way to do things? And the information just never there. So I've just picked up what works for me along the way, which is also keeping things food safe and how to tape things up. And honestly, straws are just amazing because you know they're food safe because we have to drink through them. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to show people how I did it, and hopefully it helps them if they're just completely new and not knowing where to start. But I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please leave me a comment below. I need to get my comments replied to. I do love reading through them all. It feels like I'm actually talking to somebody on the other end, so feel free to leave me a comment. And I have another vlog coming up for you soon, so I'll see you then.